Thank you. This is a great turnout. I see more and more people coming in. This is great. My name is Lorraine Wood. I'm a council member here in the city of Carlsbad, and on behalf of the city of Carlsbad, I'd like to welcome you all to this conference tonight, the Facebook Safety Seminar. This seminar is sponsored by the Honorable Pat Bates, 36th District, State of California, by the Carlsbad Unified School District, by Facebook, and the San Diego District Attorney's Office, and our Carlsbad Police Department. A big thanks to the Sheraton Hotel and Tim Stripe for providing this venue pro bono. I'd like to introduce some of our electeds here. Ms. Claudine Jones from the Carlsbad Unified School District. Veronica Williams from the Carlsbad Unified School District. Ray Pearson from the Carlsbad Unified. Kathy Rawlings from the Carlsbad Unified School District, there she is. And from Oceanside School Board, Mr. Robert Camo Gleesberg. And so with that, I'd like to introduce our wonderful Senator, Pat Bates.
Well, let me add my welcome to this evening, and thank you, Councilwoman Wood, for that fine introduction. It's really great to see you all here, and I understand that traffic was a bit of a challenge for those of you, so that's really great that this is so important that you weathered all of that to join us this evening. I want to let our Spanish-speaking friends who are here this evening to know that we do provide headsets for translation, and I believe those are in the back. So if you need those, please feel free to get them. As you know, communication today moves at a very fast pace. Fabulous social media tools such as Facebook and Twitter allow us to share our thoughts with a wide audience in just a few seconds. For example, today many of us learn of breaking news not on TV or the radio, but certainly online. And it's not just world news. Oftentimes it's about the things happening in our lives. A tweet or a Facebook photo can spread much joy if it's about a wedding, an engagement, the birth of a baby, or perhaps celebrating a victory by our home team, the Padres or the Chargers. However, that same social media tools that can spread much joy also do what? They spread much fear. That's why we are here tonight. We want to help stop another threat that faced Carlsbad High School on January 5th. A shooting threat was posted on Instagram that mentioned the school and caused much fear in this community. Thankfully, nothing happened, and the student who posted the threat was arrested. Sadly, social media has also become the latest vehicle of choice for delivering those threats. While 9 out of every 10 threats made on school campuses are a hoax, no school in America wants to experience the real one. That's why this seminar with Facebook, our local schools, and law enforcement is so timely, and I want to say, folks, it's so important. We will also have a panel discussion with a question and answer session. Facebook's Juan Salazar, the Associate Manager of State Policy at Facebook, will deliver a presentation on the tools available to report inappropriate content and to ensure we are able to answer all of your questions as possible. If you notice on your seats when you came in, there are cards that you can fill out with a question, and we will collect those, and that will be part of the presentation. And someone mentioned the cards are different colors. It doesn't make a difference. They'll all be answered the same. So if you do a blue one or a red one, it's no sign to all of us not to take that question. When you have written your question, you'll notify staff. They'll be in the back of the room, and you can raise your hand. That's the best way to get it picked up. And those will be collected. And then I'll present the questions from the cards to the panel members. One final housekeeping note, tonight's seminar is being filmed by the City of Carlsbad. It will be made available on its website so you can share it with friends. And I do recommend that you do that because we know that some people with all of the family responsibilities are not able to attend tonight. But I think we'll get such very, very important information. It will be something you want to share. The seminar will also be broadcast later on KOCT, which is the public access channel, and it also will be translated in Spanish. As we begin, I'm going to ask that if you haven't already, silence your cell phones. And a special thank you to everyone who made this seminar possible, including Facebook, Dr. Suzette Lovely, the superintendent of Carlsbad Unified School District. And I just learned that she actually lived in my hometown in Laguna Niguel back when we were first incorporating. San Diego District Attorney's Office, Carlsbad Police, Sheraton, Carlsbad Resort and Spa, and certainly my San Diego District staff. Thank you guys for doing such a great job arranging all of this. While I'm in Sacramento, they're doing all the hard work in the communities. The seminar is certainly a team effort, and I certainly appreciate everyone's help. Finally, I do want to mention one more thing. You can visit my Facebook page at facebook.com/Senator Pat Bates. You'll learn about the work that we're doing in Sacramento, and certainly, and most importantly, how I can be of assistance to all of you. I am a novice social media user myself. I just got a Facebook. I don't really know how to access all of that, so I intend to learn a lot about how to use these things in a positive way. I do have grandchildren. They've been involved, frankly, in a few incidents that have troubled certainly my daughter, and certainly as a grandparent, me, because there is so much peer pressure on the use of these devices that parents coming together, actually setting a community standard, community values on how we use these things for good, for value added to our lives, rather than as intimidating or threats to our friends and neighbors. So very important for our children to learn. So I want to thank you again for coming, and we'll have a great evening. And with that, I'd like to introduce Juan Salazar. Where are you, Juan? Who will begin the presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Just really quickly before we begin, if anybody else needs the headphone equipment for translation, could you please raise your hand? ¿Alguien que necesite el equipo de traducción? No? Okay. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you to Senator Bates for inviting us to be a part of this. For us, we really care about safety, and we really want to make sure that we get the message out to people that use our services about how to stay safe online, and specifically how to stay safe on Facebook. I have to say that I'm very excited to be here in Carlsbad today. I started my week off in Washington, D.C. in really cold weather. Went down to Arkansas, where it was very humid, and now I'm in beautiful California, so I really appreciate it. Thank you, thank you. So my name is Juan Salazar. I'm an associate manager of state political outreach at Facebook, and part of my role and what I do is I get to go out to communities all over California and talk to them about how to stay safe online, whether that's to kids or to parents. How can parents actually go ahead and protect their kids online? I do see a lot of kids in the crowd, which I'm very excited to see that you've brought your kids, just because while this message is for parents, it's also for kids, just because most of the time they're the ones that are using these services and are the folks that sometimes learn how to use these services first before their parents. So very excited to have you all here. Now, can anybody guess how many people are on Facebook? Any guesses? 15 million. We got a couple. So we have 1.4 billion people on Facebook worldwide. So that's a huge community. And as Senator Bates mentioned earlier, that's folks that are sharing some of their most intimate moments, whether it's wedding pictures, baby pictures, photos with their friends and family. That's how they've decided to go ahead and distribute that information, because it's facilitated the way that they communicate with each other. And while most people, I'd say the overwhelming majority of people that are on Facebook and are also on Instagram, are doing it with good intentions, sometimes you do run afoul in terms of finding cases where people are acting in ways that are using it for nefarious purposes, right? So, and like any other country that has a population of this size, we do have to deal with those issues. And today what I'll do is I'll walk you through, our agenda is I'll walk you through some of our tools that we have available for people that use Facebook. Before that, I'll talk a little bit about our community standards, which is really our rules of the road of how people can engage on Facebook. I'll go into some of our help and resource guides that we have available. And I'll finally close up with talking about our partnerships and feedback. I know one of the things that a lot of people don't know is that we also own Instagram. And I know Instagram tends to be one of the more popular apps with a lot of people in high school. So I'll touch on Instagram too. So our policies. Back when I was in high school, this was back in 2000, which is 15 years ago, the internet was very different, right? So the internet back then was you had an AOL Instant Messenger account, and my screen name was J1834. So no one really knew who you were. You weren't required to post a picture. And the thing that is unique to Facebook, especially when we first started out, is that we have a real name culture. So through a real name culture, you're really asked to communicate as your authentic self. And by communicating as your authentic self, you're less likely, it's more likely that you're going to be held accountable for the things that you do say. And you're less likely to go ahead and do things that are nefarious or are violating some of our standards. So that was one of the key areas that we decided to sort of put out first when Facebook was first created. In addition to that, it promotes a culture of respect. So you're more likely to go ahead and respect the people around you just because the people around you are the same people that you maybe interact with on an everyday basis. So our community standards. So you can actually go to facebook.com/policies and look up our community standards. And like I mentioned to you before, that's really our guidelines or our rules of the road of how you should be engaging on Facebook. What's appropriate behavior, what's not appropriate behavior, what are the things that we're gonna go ahead and take down. What we really go ahead and do is we focus on making sure that there's 4 key areas that we have zero tolerance for, which is nudity, things that pose a risk to self-harm or are of immediate risk where there's threats of terrorism and so forth, hate speech, and then bullying behavior. So those are the key areas that we focus on our community standards that we try to protect people in terms of their interactions, taking down posts that do violate our standards, and then having repercussions that follow from that. So as I mentioned before, we have a category where you can call zero tolerance. From there, it's really thinking of the way that people interact on Facebook. We encourage people to communicate freely, be able to say what is on their mind, but beyond knowing what is on their mind or them stating what is on their mind, they are really, there's a fine line that you're measuring from there, right? So there is a possibility, for example, that if you share a comment or of your political perspective, you may offend someone because they may not agree with you. And that's vastly different than causing a harm. So you directly threatening someone, that's a harm. So that's a fine line that we need to sort of work through in terms of making sure that we keep the platform open, have it be an open platform for people to share, while also making sure that people don't feel threatened and are less likely to come back to Facebook, come back to Instagram and engage on these platforms. The next thing I want to talk about is context matters, right? So we have a community operations team, which I'll talk about a little bit later, that's based all over the world. They work 24/7 on reports that are filed every day. And one of the things that we have a challenge with and we're getting better about is sort of understanding the context of certain posts, certain conversations that are occurring. For example, if I were in high school and I walked into a high school with this shirt on, and someone says, "Oh man, you look like a walking billboard, nice shirt," and then everybody else that day starts saying, "Oh, nice shirt, dude, nice shirt," and then I go home, I log onto my Facebook, and there's another kid that says, "Oh, nice shirt." Obviously, that's bullying behavior, because that's really gone ahead and taken something that's happened in the context of a high school, and it's really putting a lot of like pressure on me to feel bad about the shirt that I'm wearing, right? But our community operations team doesn't have that backstory of what happened during that day. So that's really the challenge that we have and we're trying to work through. And we really need your help in trying to identify those circumstances. And our tools, when I walk in, I'll talk about our tools, we'll let you know where you can be of help in those circumstances. So first of all, let me talk about some of the more basic tools that we have available for folks. How many of you have a Facebook account? It's good to see. Awesome. So the standard one, and I think it's industry leading, just your privacy controls when you're going to post something. So you have the choice right up front who you want to post it to, whether that's public, whether that's just to your friends or a select group of friends. For teens and people that are 18 years old, it's automatic that it does not go public. It'll just go to their group of friends, which is different from if you were 18 and older, where you can go ahead and have it set to public. In addition to that, you're able to customize your groups. So if you just want to create a family group where you just want to share specific content with your family, you can do that. And the more that you use a group, the tool has the ability to go ahead and recognize who you post with the most, right? So if you mostly post to a certain group of friends, then that certain group of friends is going to pop up right up at the top. Now, let me walk you through some of our settings that we have on the back end to make sure that you're protecting your privacy. This is especially important for kids in terms of understanding what they're posting, when they're posting it, and who's actually seeing it, and having the ability to go back and change those settings to understand your audience. So first of all, by going to our settings, you can actually go to timeline and tagging settings, where that's the area that you can go ahead and change the settings. It's the centralized area to change your settings of who's going to go ahead and see your post, who's not, whether or not you want someone that tags you on a post for that to come up automatically, or if you'd prefer for that post to first be screened by you and approve it. So in addition to that, we also have the activity log, which you can access on the left-hand side. I always mix up my left and my right. So the left-hand side of the screen, you'll be able to access your activity log. And through the activity log, it gives you the history of everything that's occurred, the posts that you've liked, the posts that you've created, the posts that you've shared. So if you want to go ahead and sit down with your teenage son or daughter and get a sense of what their interaction has been on Facebook, this is a good place to view that, and a good place to actually start a conversation in terms of what should be appropriate to post and what should not. The other area that we have is through the photos, and you can actually access it also through that right-hand side, where you can see the specific photos that are shared, and you can go back and change the actual sharing mechanism for it, right? So you can change the settings. So if it was posted to everybody, you can change it back to just posting it to your group of friends. Now, another tool that we have available that's really easy, and let me first ask this question. Has anybody here ever blocked someone on Facebook? A couple of people. It felt good, right? So it allows you to go ahead and completely close down any communication that you have with that individual. Maybe you're friends with them in the real life, but really something happened that the engagement has turned sour, whether that's on Facebook or in real life, and it lets you cut off that communication where they're not notified that you've blocked them off, but it's almost as if you disappeared from Facebook. And really, this is a great tool just to make sure that you are able to control the environment that you're in. If you don't want to engage with someone that you feel has not been a person that you want to continue interacting with, then this is a way to just completely block them off. And just really quick, if you see the 3 dots on the right-hand side, you can just go ahead and click on those 3 dots and just go to block. So this is a very interesting picture of myself sleeping. So let me tell you why it says hate speech right underneath it. So a couple years ago, what we were having a lot of folks do is when they reported pictures that were unflattering, like this one, they would go ahead and report them, and because the tool that we had at that time wasn't very intuitive, what they would do is to get rid of the picture, try to get rid of the picture, they would just go ahead and click hate speech and then report it out to our community operations folks. So obviously this is not hate speech. My friend Omaira, on a school trip a couple years ago, decided to post up this picture where I was sleeping, and I mean, it doesn't really bother me in the sense that like I feel offended, but I just don't want it on Facebook. And really that tends to be some of the interactions that you have on Facebook, where someone will post a picture or a comment or it's mostly pictures and videos, where it doesn't necessarily violate our community standards, so the rules of the road that I mentioned earlier. But we decided to go ahead and build a tool where people can resolve issues that they have on a one-on-one basis, right? So we worked with the UC Berkeley Center for Science and Social Good, and we created a reporting flow. This is our social reporting tool, where to go ahead and get this picture taken down, we first have to evaluate whether or not it violates our community standards. If it falls under the category of something that's embarrassing or something that you just want taken down from Facebook, but it doesn't really end up escalating to the point where it's hate speech or it promotes like threatening a threat or anything like that, we went ahead and created this reporting flow where it really tries to nail down what the specific issue is with the post. And what it does is once it goes ahead and, for example, in that case, I posted that it was embarrassing. So it generates language for you that you can send the direct message over to that individual to get the picture taken down. We have this tool is actually used about 6 million times a week. Yeah. And about 80% of the time, there's dialogue that actually happens between people, and the picture is taken down, right? So sometimes someone will go ahead and upload like a whole album of pictures, and they don't necessarily see what's in those pictures. So that creates the case of there being an unflattering picture like the one I just showed you earlier, where just by going ahead and opening that level of communication between individuals, it allows them to go ahead and resolve these problems before they escalate, or there's interactions that happen in the real world that they start thinking negatively of one another and so forth, and things escalate. So this is something that we developed to go ahead and deal with those specific issues. Now, whenever you do encounter a concerning post, and this will walk through the specifically when you're on your cell phone. So what we're encountering now is that most people, and I believe it's probably going to be the case in this room too, that most people, when they engage on Facebook, it's less likely that they're doing it now through a PC or a computer, but just through their phone, right? So this is what this is what it would look like if you're trying to report a post. So if you see a concerning post that you think violates our community standards or is just something that you don't like, you would go ahead and click report the post. After reporting the post, it'll ask you why you don't want to see this. Or actually, if you click I don't want to see this, it'll go ahead and ask you why you don't want to see this. And it'll go into the reporting flow that I mentioned earlier to get to the nuts and bolts of why you don't want to see it. But if you click report this post, if you see, give me a second, it should be on Facebook. So this is the next screen that you would land on. And by landing on this screen, If you would click on the bottom of It's Annoying or Not Interesting, where it says, I don't think it should be on Facebook, it'll land you on the key areas that are part of our community standards, where we try to determine whether or not it does violate our community standards. So by clicking on one of those, it'll go ahead and ask you additional questions in terms of what you can go ahead and do, right? So something that I communicate to kids all the time, and anyone actually, is if you ever get to the point where you get to this part of the reporting flow, and the issue that you have is that the post is either threatening or there's an issue of self-harm or it's suicidal, definitely report it to us. But the first thing that you should actually do is report it to the police or someone that's a trusted adult that will be able to act on it immediately. And I can't emphasize that enough, because although we have community operations folks that are reviewing this content on a very hourly basis, and we prioritize issues like this, you're going to be able to get action on that a lot sooner than ourselves. Once we actually get to the post and we report it to the police, it's going to take a little bit longer than if you would report it to the police directly. So in addition to that, and this is also part of our social reporting tool, is that if there's ever the case where you're encountering cases of cyberbullying or cases like this, you are also given the option, as you can see here where it says get help for Matt. If you were to click on that, it allows you to go ahead and pull in a trusted adult to that conversation, right? So if you see bullying behavior and you feel like, or if a teen sees bullying behavior and they feel like they can't deal with the situation on their own, it's important for them to know that they can pull a trusted adult into that conversation, where that adult can go ahead and reach out to the parent of the other individual or reach out to school administrators to begin addressing the issue. So finally, whenever a report does go through, what occurs is it's sent to our community operations folks, and I'll walk you through the size of that team in a little bit. But the way that you keep track of your reports is through our support dashboard. So this is actually in the settings. So when we went ahead and I walked you through the settings, it's going to be on the left-hand side at the bottom. So before, this is one of the big complaints that we got from folks, that whenever they would report something, they would never really know what happened to the report, just because there was no feedback that they received or just reply. So if you reported a picture that you felt was a picture that you just didn't like, you never really knew whether or not that picture was taken down, right? So we created the support dashboard so you can actually see what action we've taken. If the action that we've taken, for example, because the picture did not violate our community standards, what we do is then we give you additional options in terms of how to try to deal with that situation. So as I mentioned, we do run our global operations team, or global community operations team worldwide. We have offices in Menlo Park, which is our headquarters, Hyderabad, India, also in Dublin, Ireland, and in Austin, Texas. So as I mentioned earlier, 1.4 billion people with a lot of reports coming in all the time. We do review reports 24/7. We have staff that, it's a couple thousand staff that are part of this team. In addition to that, what they do is actually, they're equipped with trying to understand the context of certain situations, right? So since we have folks from all over the world, we support over 30 languages and so forth, so. Now, let me talk a little bit about our help center. Whenever you do encounter a problem on Facebook, for example, if you have a case of getting your account, your account is hacked, you can go ahead and go to our help center. So it's just facebook.com/help. And you can just type in hacked, and that's the quickest way to report your account as being hacked, or not report it, but give you the steps to recover your account. In addition to that, there's always cases that we encounter about that have to do with impersonation. So if you ever have an issue of, or if a teen ever has an issue of having someone else create an account in their name, this is how they can go ahead and understand the steps to go ahead and recover those accounts. Something that I was part of one of the previous reporting flows was just our privacy checkup. So this is a tool that we have that's right here on the right-hand side. It's up on the little lock icon. So that little lock icon is an industry-wide used tool or just symbol where that's where you know you're going to access your security and your privacy settings. So you'll find it in Twitter and a bunch of other social media apps. But through the privacy checkup, it's extremely useful in the sense that it walks you through your privacy, right? So it walks you through you knowing when you're going ahead and putting up a post, who's going to see your post. In addition to that, it also goes ahead and lets you know what apps are pulling information from your Facebook account. So if you've allowed your Facebook account to be accessed by an app just for verification purposes, it'll allow you to go back and check the applications that you no longer want to be accessed by that application. Facebook Privacy Basics does the very same thing. It does the same thing, but it's less integrated into your own account, but it's a separate website that you can go on where you can find the specific issues that you may find. So facebook.com/about/basics will get you there, and that's another way to look at the flows of how to address some of the privacy concerns that you may have. Next, we actually have a family safety center. So through our collaboration with a lot of nonprofits that focus on safety and industry experts, we created this family safety center that is very much geared towards parents and specific audiences, right? So it's towards parents, towards students, and towards advocates to understand better how to make sure that they're protecting themselves online. And there's additional resources on there. One of them being, and I'll go into it in a little bit, is the cyberbullying hub that we've developed. So through our cyberbullying hub, we've worked with the Connect Safely and the Family Online Safety Institute to develop this 8-page guide on how to talk to your kids about cyberbullying, whether or not they're being the bullies or they're being bullied, and how to address those situations. So what I'll do is I'll make that resource available to you all through Senator Bates's office, where it can actually be emailed to you. It's about an 8-page guide that's incredibly useful. And finally, like I mentioned, we do have our partnerships. We have our Global Safety Advisory Board, and these are really the folks that have helped us build all these tools. So we have people that are safety experts internally on Facebook, but we also use these nonprofits as our sounding board, right? So whenever we have a new product or we're having issues with the interactions that people are having on Facebook, they're really the people that we go to develop our tools, just because we recognize that while we are operating the platform, we're operating Instagram, much of the expertise that we find also comes from the outside, and they're an incredible resource for us to make sure that we're building the tools that people are gonna find the most useful. This is what I mentioned to you earlier, that cyberbullying hub. You can actually access that 8-page guide online, but like I said, I'll try to see if we can actually send you the actual document, and you can find it on facebook.com/safety/bullying. Oh, and finally, just feedback. I was going to mention, one of the things that we do and we always go ahead and enjoy about doing these types of events is your feedback, right? So let us know what we should be improving, what we can do better, just because by receiving that type of information, we are a small, let me say this, we are a small company workforce-wise. So we have about, for being a tool that reaches 1.4 billion people, we have about 10,000, close to 11,000 employees, right? So the more that we can actually go ahead and hear feedback from you, I think the better it's gonna be in terms of how we can make the product more useful for yourself and have people come back to Facebook and feel comfortable using Facebook. And now Instagram. So how many of you have Instagram accounts? There's a couple? Okay. So the first recommendation I have, and this is something that I was going to share towards the end, is for parents, one of the things that you really want to do is that if your kids are on Instagram or they're on any other social media app, I would really advise you that if you're allowing them to use that app, to also have that application yourself, just so you understand how it functions, and you understand what type of environment you're actually letting them into, right? And potentially you understand what type of interactions that they're gonna have. And I'm not saying that because I want all of you to join Instagram, but I feel like it's a good tool for you. So Instagram, just to give you a little bit of background. So Instagram is a application that we acquired in 2012. It's really a phone app that focuses on point of view, right? So it's really artistic. The two individuals that are the founders of Instagram, a lot of people think that they're engineers, but they're actually design students. So they've created this amazing app where you can go ahead and share your point of view in terms of like the pictures that you've shared. A lot of my friends, what they do is like they'll share pictures of like the meals that they go out and take. So it's very unique in terms of what you can do with it. If you're really into photography, this is a place that you can go ahead and use filters to go ahead and get your point of view out. So Instagram has about 300 million users, so it's smaller than the amount of people that use Facebook, but is growing pretty rapidly. It is popular with a lot of teens, and for those very reasons that I mentioned before, right, that it promotes this very artistic sense of you getting yourself out there and sharing those moments in your life that you feel are important to you. So let me walk you through some of the privacy and also safety tools that we've developed in Instagram. So Instagram, because it is a phone app and it's purely a phone app, it's a little bit more intuitive in terms of how it works and how we built out the tools for it. So for example, if you wanted to go ahead and change the privacy settings for Instagram, it's going to be, it's very binary, right? So you can go to the edit profile part of your own profile. So when you go into edit profile, at the bottom end of it, it's binary in the sense that you have the option to make your account private or make your account public. So it's not specific to pictures that you're sharing, but it's either or. So it's one or the other. You can't do both. And I would say, in the recommendation that I do have for parents all the time, is that if your student is using Instagram and they're under 18 years old, there's no reason for them to actually have their account be public. So I would really advise for you to implore them to change it over to private, just because by changing it over to private, they're really able to control who's following them on Instagram and the engagement that they're having on Instagram. So they know who's seeing their pictures. The only people that are able to comment on their pictures are their friends that they've allowed to follow them on Instagram. In addition to that, you also have the ability to screen the comments. So it's easier for you to screen the comments, and whenever you have a hashtag, so hashtags are a way to go ahead and get your pictures recognized. If you have a hashtag, it doesn't allow it to be made public, so it's still closed down to just that private setting. The only exception I would have is that if you do have a student that is really into photography, or they feel as if having a public presence on Instagram is a way for them to get their workout, that would be a place where you'd have a conversation whether or not it'd be appropriate for them to go ahead and set it to public. Also, blocking a user. It's very easy to also go ahead and block a user. So this is also in cases where you're having a negative interaction with someone. By going to that person's profile on Instagram, there's a outward arrow on the right-hand side that you can just go ahead and click on up there. At the bottom end of it, it'll pull up a screen that you can either report the picture or you can just go ahead and block the user completely. And then again, for deleting comments and reporting comments, it's also very, very easy, right? So if you have a photo that you've posted on Instagram, by going on your photos, you'd click on the actual comment that you want removed, and you would just go ahead and swipe. So by going, you click comment, then click the comment you want to remove, and then just swipe it out, and that gets rid of the comments that you really don't want to be out there, you feel aren't very appropriate for the picture that you've posted. In addition to that, if you feel like that person is actually posting negative stuff on your pictures, you should block them or just not allow them to follow you anymore. Now, I mentioned to you earlier, when you report a photo on Instagram, it's back to that place that I mentioned to you before where it'll pull up that pop-up screen. And that pop-up screen will allow you to report that picture. And the community standards that we have for Instagram are very similar to the ones we have for Facebook. So whenever you do encounter those issues, you'd report it, and it's very much the same way that the reports are treated, where it goes to our community operations team to determine whether or not it violates our community standards. And this is our help center. So our help center, you can actually go ahead and also access it through the app. It's very easy. It will jump you off to like a website where the help center will allow you to take care of specific issues that you may have with your account. So that is it in terms of some of the content I wanted to share with you today. I think final tips that I have for you in terms of making sure that you're keeping your kids safe online is, like I mentioned to you earlier, right? So it's having that conversation with them at the appropriate age, whether or not they should have a social media account, the type of interactions that they want it for. And in addition to that, what type of social media should they be accessing, right? Whether it's Twitter, whether it's Facebook. I know earlier today they mentioned one of the issues that's really prevalent here in your community is an application called Burnbook, which sounds horrendous from actually the description that they gave me. So having that conversation with them early, I think really sets them up for understanding what they're gonna use social media for, and what we really try to promote. And I think it's something that is been in the development since a lot of these social media applications came to be, is developing good digital citizenship, right? So what should be appropriate for you to say on Facebook or on Instagram, and how should that sort of be parodied with what you say in the real world, and how is that different, or why should that be different? In most cases, it should not, right? So what you share on these social media apps should be the way that you want to conduct yourself. In addition to that, I'll end on this point. The thing that's very important for kids to recognize now is reputation. So whatever you share on Instagram, you share on Snapchat, is really reflective of you, and it may stick with you in terms of you growing up, and if you're looking for a job, you're 18 years old and you've posted, or 19 years old and you posted something to, let's say, Facebook, and it's public, or it was made public by you, then at that point, an employer can actually go ahead and go through your Facebook account, and whatever is public, they may have access to it, right? And do you really want that post to be reflective of who you are? So that's something very important to keep in mind. So I'll close with that, and I know we're have time for a couple questions before we jump off to our next panel discussion, and actually have a break before that. So is there any questions that we have?
Okay, so if your child is just starting, hello, if your child is just starting on social media, they're 10, or they're not going to start until probably 12 or 13, but who knows. Okay, so is it best for a parent to actually set the account up, and can we block it so that the only people that they have access to are a group? And that group, we would be monitoring who got added and who didn't get added, or is that possible?
Yeah, so I would say the conversation that you have with them, it depends on when you want to have it. The individuals that are allowed to go ahead and have a Facebook account need to be 13 years old or older. So if you're under 13 years old, you can't be on Facebook. They could report that profile, and we have to take it down, and we would take it down. In terms of your question of sort of setting up the account, I would definitely say that you should sit down with them and set the account, have a conversation of who they should be sharing it with. But really, I believe that conversation is really a conversation of building trust with them, right? So you want to feel as if you are communicating with them in a way where they feel like they trust you. and they're willing to go and share this information, right? So by them being willing to share this information with you, I think it makes it a little bit easier for you to retain that good relationship that you have with your son or daughter. So.
Is there a reporting tool or mechanism for a parent or a school administrator to report a cyber threat to Facebook or to verify a cyber threat if they do not have direct access to the post?
Yeah.
Or they may not even be on Facebook, but they've learned of it through the community or through their children that there may be a cyber threat out there and want to either verify it or report it to Facebook and take it down.
Yeah, so something that we have that's available, and this is specifically for law enforcement, whenever there's a threat, an immediate threat of, let's say, terrorism, or I know there was a recent incident here in your community around a school incident, where the police or law enforcement can go ahead and contact us. They would go on facebook.com/records, and they would go ahead and submit that request to go ahead and have access to that account. Also, if this is actually reported as an incident, then we flag it and we begin working on it. But it's very important that if you see this account or you see this post and you see it online, you report it through the actual post, where you go ahead and designate it as it violating not only our community centers, but it's an immediate threat. That way we can begin acting on it. But then again, also notifying your police department or folks that will be able to remedy it right away, and we can go ahead and get them access to that information. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate your patience and your attendance.
Thank you so much, Juan. Very, very complicated if you're a novice like I am, and how you even get into that. But the kids are, they're very adept at getting into this very quickly. So, excellent presentation. We're going to take a 5-minute break. It'll give you opportunity to fill out your card with any questions you will have for our panel, and we'll seat them up here in just about 5 minutes. And then our staff. Cards to our staff, and then we'll get the question and answer rolling. Thank you. We are ready to begin. We have a number of questions, and what I'm going to ask the panel is let's quickly introduce ourselves so that our audience knows who you are and certainly what your profession is. We'll start with our policeman.
Hi, I'm Officer Fanini, Carlsbad Police Department, 12 years, and I'm currently the school resource officer at Carlsbad High School. Thank you.
I'm Michelle Lindley. I'm the chief of the Juvenile Division of the District Attorney's Office, and I've been with the office for 28 years.
I'm Suzette Lovely, the superintendent in Carlsbad Unified, and thank you so much for being here tonight.
I've been asked to ask our panelists to answer the questions from the podium because they are filming. So we'll start with the first question. This is one that's been posed to me many times this evening and before, and it is, are parents responsible for what their children post online? And maybe we could ask our Dr. Yeah, Dr. Lovely, you want to take that?
Here, I'll keep this here and then I can talk. I would say that as parents, we are responsible for all of our children's behavior until they turn 18. And we are responsible for monitoring what our children do online, and I think it's great that we have some tools to help us do that. So I would say yes, but it isn't just your sole responsibility. We have a responsibility too, as the school and the educators. It's a partnership that we have with our parents, and so we do that together. But their devices primarily come from you, and you pay for them every month and allow them to have those accounts. But we certainly help monitor, and when we find out things, we share that with you, and we appreciate the parents' responsiveness as well.
Thank you, Dr. Lovely. You know, I don't think it's going to work where you guys have to keep popping up and down like Jack in the Box. So I'm going to do an executive decision here, and
We'll make the
yeah, right. We'll have them swing over here. Next question is for the district attorney and Dr. Lovely. What is protocol for students who posted the threat? She was arrested, and then what happens? Would there ever be a situation where a student would return to school? It's kind of a multi-question.
So in the case of school discipline, the most severe discipline that we can give to a student is expulsion. And that's under the law, they're minors, and the most that a student can be expelled is for one full school year, and then they're allowed to come back into a public school system. We can also, working with the district attorney's office in certain cases, like when there's vandalism and those kinds of things, and I know there's questions about online as well, we can work with the district attorney's office to seek restitution from the student and their family. So expulsion is the most serious consequence that we have access to as a school district.
So to answer my part of the question, I just have kind of a short PowerPoint, because one of the things that people don't really understand is what happens in the juvenile justice system. And part of the reason for that is because the whole juvenile justice system is based around rehabilitation, unlike what we talk about in the adult system. And when you're building something around rehabilitation, when it was created to be confidential, because if all that stuff would get out about what different kids did, it would be remembered forever. It could change stupid mistakes into life-changing issues. So that's why generally everything in juvenile is confidential. So just because you don't hear about something happening doesn't mean that it's not going on in the juvenile justice system. And so it's also based on graduated sanctions, so they don't want to start at sending someone away to a youth prison, which they call DJJ. They're going to try and start at the least restrictive alternative and then move up, taking into account public safety. So if somebody does something like a robbery, they're not going to start with saying, we'll go home with a curfew, but they're going to balance those two type things. There's all kinds of court hearings. They're really a lot like what you see in adult. They have a detention hearing, which is like an arraignment when a minor has been placed into juvenile hall. They have readiness hearings, settlement hearings, jurisdictional hearings. That's another name for a trial. Because in juvenile, for whatever reason, we have to have everything named differently so nobody knows what anybody's talking about. They have dispositional hearings, another name for a sentencing hearing. And then, unlike adult, they have regular review hearings before they make a determination whether somebody's been rehabilitated or helped to the point where their jurisdiction can be terminated and they can go out of the juvenile justice system. There's all kinds of different things I talked about before that can happen when a minor, a juvenile who commits a crime, a minor, is sentenced, basically, in juvenile court. It can be anything from going home with conditions to a drug court, truancy court, home supervision, residential treatment facilities. They have, the probation has Breaking Cycles, which is a program that gives families and kids partners and wraparound services so that they can help change the dynamic maybe that's going on in the house into one that works better with open communication. They have a facility in Campo. The girls have a facility. There's a facility at Camp Barrett. There's the YOU program that is all the way down in East Mesa. It's the last step here locally. It can be up to 465 days. And that's the last step before DJJ, which is the youth prison. There's juvenile court consequences that people may not be aware of. For instance, if your child is in juvenile hall, you as the parent pay each day for that child to be in juvenile hall. If they are on ESP or if they are on home supervision, you as a parent pay every day for that. If, as has happened, sometimes they cut off that ESP bracelet, you pay for that bracelet. There are fines, there are restitution, and restitution has both minor and parent responsibility. And if that's not paid during probation, they get off probation, that it can convert to a civil judgment that follows, even though they're not on probation any longer. Also, the other kind of things to remember as a parent about, or to know about as a parent, is that probation supervision, when a child does something and they become involved in the juvenile justice system and then they're sentenced, they became a ward of the court. So the court is really their parent, and the court gets to decide when they come in, when their curfew is. You as a parent may feel like 6 o'clock is great, or 10 o'clock is great, but the court may say, no, we want them in at 6. And the court gets to make the rules. If they want to travel out of county, go to Disneyland. If they're on a soccer traveling team, they want to leave the county to do that, there has to be probation permission to do that. The courts could say, no, you can't have a cell phone, even though as a parent you want them to have a cell phone. Or they can't use a computer. They can mandate counseling. They can also, a lot of charges that you don't think of can cause a child to lose their driver's license, or if they don't have one, to have it delayed. Things like alcohol use, graffiti. It doesn't have to necessarily have anything to do with a car. So those are kind of just like a little snapshot, so you know what happens behind that curtain that you really don't see. There are some charges where you can see what's happening because the code says, the law says, that there are some that are so important we'll allow the public to see. But overall, a lot of things happen in juvenile court, and you are never going to know what's going on.
Thank you, Michelle. This next question we'll give to Officer Benin. It's from a law enforcement point of view, should parents have the GPS settings enabled on a minor's phone? The issue is locating my own child versus predators locating my child.
Well, I think that question would be best answered on an individual basis. I can't give a law enforcement advice on every person on how to parent their child. I know with myself, I would probably put the GPS setting on so I could locate my children. There's also other ways, just good parenting skills on how to check on your child, but I don't know how predators access it. I'm not too much, I don't have knowledge on that end of it, but I would definitely like to keep tabs on my children as best possible, so.
Thank you. This is, again, for Officer Fanine and Dr. Lovely. Can you explain about the January 5th incident? When did the school get notified, and when and how the police got involved, and ultimately the arrest?
I believe that the post went up somewhere around 8:49 or somewhere around that time in the morning, and my office got a phone call at 9:15 from a parent whose child had told her mother that an Instagram threat had been posted, and concurrent to that, the principal also had gotten a call from a parent as well whose child had reported it. So that's the great thing about our children, is they tell you things and they're close to you. And I've said this to we've spoken to our PTA, I've spoken to our PTA many times. You will now find out about these things first before we do as the school. It's just the reality of it, and you heard Juan talking about that, about the speed of Facebook. So we need you to tell us, because we don't always know first. So by 9:15 or 9:20, we had information, and I had contacted the captain, and Captain Gallucci, I know, was here earlier, and we appreciate the support from Carlsbad Police Department. And then I believe concurrent to that, officers had been dispatched over to the school around that time. The school went into lockdown at 9:30, which was their break. The decision to go into lockdown right before the break was so that we could control as they were interviewing kids and trying to find out where this post came from, as opposed to if you've ever been on a high school campus and there's 2,500 children out in the quad and you're trying to find witnesses and things, it's difficult to do an investigation. So I think it was around that time.
Yes, I think the first wind we got of it was someone working at a Jamba Juice in Oceanside that got the post on Instagram, and they called our dispatch. And I think all this information came in all about the same time. It's pretty alarming when you get something, that kind of post at a school. You know, school's supposed to be a safe place for children to learn, not to be afraid. But you know, we immediately, school went into lockdown, and we immediately started investigating it. Officers went to the campus, made sure the campus was secure, and also, at the same time, we're going into investigating it. So initially, the officers on campus, what they did was they were able to access the post. We started searching the name of the post, quickly realized it was a fake name, and during the post, the location settings were on, so we were able to narrow it down where it happened on campus. So we knew that we had information that it was on campus, at least the person doing it was on campus. And then we teamed up with our information lady at the Carlsbad Police Department, who was accessing it live, and every kid who posted, every person who posted that we could match to a real person, we started bringing them in and trying to get as much information as possible. And then at the time when at the time those officers determined that the threat had subsided a little bit, and they decided to release the kids for the day.
Thank you. This next question I'll ask our district attorney to respond to. It suggests perhaps, do we need another law? It says, I'd like to know why kids under 18 years of age are allowed to use Facebook. Teens do not have the maturity to handle social media, nor are they aware of what's appropriate or inappropriate to say on Facebook. So do we need another tool in our chest to address some of perhaps the immaturity that's out there and having devices that might suggest someone needs maybe a little more discernment in the decisions they make?
I don't know that we need a law, because then what you're going to be doing is, you know, you're going to put a bunch of kids into the juvenile justice system that don't need to be in there. You're going to be putting criminalizing something that really is more about judgment and about what Facebook has said is open dialogue between parents and kids. Sometimes when we try and fix something with a legislative fix like that, we end up making it worse. Now, do we need maybe some more specific laws when certain things are said? That's a different story. But just to say, no, it's against the law for someone to be on Facebook, you would then have to make some type of penalty, and then that would get them into juvenile justice system. And I don't really think that's where we need to go with this.
Thank you. It also suggests a lot of enforcement. And then we have the whole issue of where do the funds come from, and we know we all struggle with that currently in many of the issue areas. This question is for Dr. Lovely. How will the volunteer pledge and the media policy for elementary schools change in the upcoming school year to reflect a commitment to protect the privacy and security of each student? The current versions are vague and misunderstood. How will parents be guided as to the responsible social media practices on our campuses?
One of the things that we constantly do is revise and look at our policies. And when you think of cyberbullying and the evolution of that in a very short period of time, it really wasn't in our schools probably 5 years ago. And so we have, and actually our Director of Pupil Personnel, Tim Evanson, is here, and he does a wonderful job of looking at those policies, working with our principals, and making sure that they're updated. And so we do that on an annual basis, and we will continue to do that with our current policies as well.
Thank you. I believe this might be for Juan, this question. It says, what is Burn Book? How does it work? I don't know what Burn Book is, guys, so I'm thinking he must. What are the positive attributes of it, if any, and what are the negatives?
To be honest with you, it wasn't until today that I actually heard of Burn Book. What I can tell you is that we do not own Burn Book. No, but I mean, this actually goes ahead and speaks to how fast technology is evolving and how important it is for parents to really keep up with the applications or just the apps that are out there for students. Burnbook really sounds as an application that is meant for bullying, right? So it literally goes ahead and lends itself towards bullying and making kids feel bad and not wanting them to go to school. So my suggestion for parents is to really go ahead, and I've mentioned this before, is understand what your kids are using, why they're using it, and having conversations with them of whether or not that means that they're being good or bad digital citizens. Because whatever they do when they're doing it online, it reflects on them when they're out in the real world. So just keeping that in mind in terms of how they're engaging on the internet.
We've almost had perfect timing because we're coming to the last question and almost the end of this evening because we're supposed to wrap up by 8. But here's a question. Can you talk about kids creating fictitious accounts? What parents can do to determine if their child is using a fictitious account? And that's for you, Juan.
So as I mentioned before, this is what we consider imposter accounts. So imposter accounts, if you've determined that your child is actually using an imposter account, it can immediately be taken down. Or if, for example, another student at the school is impersonating your child, and you've determined that this student has all the information, has a picture up of the child and so forth, you can actually go ahead and report it to us. And as soon as we go ahead and receive that information, we require that account holder to go ahead and verify their identity. So they have to provide us with a copy of an ID or a way that it shows that it's them. So we would go ahead and shut down the account. They would have to verify their identity. If it's not them, then the account is just completely closed down.
Well, that is it in terms of the questions that have come from all of you. Juan, do you have any closing comments you'd like to make to our parents and families this evening?
Yeah, I really appreciate all of you being here, right? So I think something that gets lost in the development of technology and how fast-paced things go is being very intentional in terms of understanding how these applications work and how important safety is. What we've tried to do is really beef up our communication and our tools that we have in terms of keeping people safe online. And I think we have a good track record of trying to do that for folks in terms of the tools that we've built. We still have a long way to go, and we really appreciate your help in terms of the feedback and so forth. I know many of you had a lot more questions in terms of that were Facebook specific. So if I didn't get to answer your question on a one-on-one, definitely come up to me after, and I'll be more than happy to actually address it.
And I think the panelists will hang around for a few more minutes, too, if you have any specific questions you want to address to them. I want to thank you, Juan, and I think what I'm very pleased to hear, you spoke about the Facebook community, and we know there's 1.2 billion folks in that, 1.4 in that community, but they do have standards. So that should be a level of confidence that we all have, that here in our smaller communities that we can reflect those standards and how we want to treat one another and what our community values are, because you're providing the opportunity to do that through this incredible network media. So thank you so much. Thank you so much to our panelists for taking your time this evening to address, I think, one of the most significant issues facing parents in this generation. Thank you again, and again, thank you to my staff and to all of you. And I just want to reiterate, I am your new senator, but this is my community, my family, my grandchildren, and my children live very near here. We have a home in Encinitas that we hope to retire to. So I am with you and always available. And during the interim, which is will begin in September through the end of the year, I hope to be able to come to more of your organizations, your meetings. PTA, I love PTA. I was a PTA. I was a carnival chairman. That's how I got started in all this, guys. So anyway, I was a social worker too, so I really am a community person, and I want you all to feel that I'm very accessible. I have to share with you my grandchildren. I took care of them this weekend, and I picked them up at school, and my granddaughter said, "Well, you're a senator. Why don't you have a limousine?" So I thought, well, you know, in some people's eyes, I have a lot of status. But anyway, I really appreciate you coming out tonight and hope to see you all. And certainly, again, please feel free to contact me whenever you need help on any one of these issues. Thank you, and then our panel's here for a little while longer to share with you.